Rain, who is disgusted by the memory of Esther's values, rushes after the pickpocket. With just a few steps, he was parallel to the target. He was very annoyed because in the midst of his very busy schedule, something happened that disturbed him. Rain, who was at the peak of his frustration, was determined to turn the thief into charcoal with his lightning magic. But his movements were stopped by someone's shout who ordered him to get out of the way. A girl in a white uniform appears and casts earth magic to prevent the thief from escaping. The girl was quite proud of herself and called her Christitan. Lin recognized the girl's background. With a sand warrior, high-confident attitude, it was clear the girl was a warden. Warden is a ruler of the Eastern Empire. Warden is the same as the Ludwig family, which is one of the 5 leading magical families in the Empire. Before Lin regained all of Rain's body memories, he met the girl several times at family gatherings. Every time she meets Rain, the girl always says hurtful words and sounds belittling Rain, even though these words can also be said to be motivation. Because her attitude was too direct, those who were there called the girl Goody Two-Shoes. Rain wondered how the girl could already wear a uniform at this time when she should be around the same age as Rain. The pickpocket didn't give up without a fight. He even responded to the girl's attack using wind magic, which caused a gust of wind around him to blow away several people. Rain acted and used his eye abilities. It can be seen that the pickpocket turned out to be a mage with quite good magical abilities. Rain saw something attached to the pickpocket's wrist. The pickpocket fought the girl quite fiercely. The girl then fought back using 2-star level magic without even chanting. Rain was surprised. His family, namely the Ludwig family, is known as the Stealing Mages, while on the other hand the Warden family is known as the Commanding Mages. The magic passed down from the Warden family is a magic that summons earth attributes, such as the example used by the girl currently is the Sandstone Golem. The girl is quite confident in her magic, but the pickpocket is no less powerful even though she has to use something on his wrist as a way to use magic that can fight the golem released by the girl. The girl was still confident even though she was a little doubtful. But then Rain appeared there and helped. He advised those there that showing their trump cards too quickly would result in them being counterattacked. Rain tips the two of them that in magic, casting a spell first doesn't necessarily mean you'll win the fight. In the world of magic, speed in casting a spell, or whoever casts a spell first, does not necessarily mean that they will be the winner. Rain's appearance surprised the girl. Rain Eyes was able to analyze the magic used, and after analyzing for a moment, the result of his observation was the shape of a magic circle in the form of a circle with the runes written on it being fire. Therefore he could easily use magic that could counter the pickpocket's magic. The girl thought that Rain was a mage with the water element. The water element in magic could be the natural enemy of the earth element, even though the golem created by the girl was not inferior to a 1-star magic spell. The pickpocket was quite panicked, but he tried to calm down by underestimating his opponents. He said that the girl who was arrogant about her strength did not know the ins and outs of her own strength. Rain didn't talk much, but he continued his magic and even protected the girl. The pickpocket shouted at them not to waste their time, and it would be better to just die. But even with a little difficulty, Rain continued to try to maintain his magic. Suddenly the golem slowly fell, making the pickpocket and the girl shocked, while Rain, who was still calm, tried to avoid the impact. Rain got new knowledge from his current experience, where when he stole other people's magic he couldn't use his own magic. Therefore he tried to use the 1-star spell that had been used a while ago. The formula was a double square magic circle with runes written on it. Arbyalb and Ko. Rain gets bind and reverse flow for earth element magic, so the calculation used is Previs differentiation. He managed to find a solution in a short time and made changes to the law. The golem, which was still not completely destroyed, was now wrapped around a kind of plant vine, which was the result of Rain's magic. The pickpocket was so surprised to see this. And not only did it catch the golem, the tendrils also started catching the pickpocket. The pickpocket, who was no longer able to move anywhere, was approached by Rain, who came to take back what had been stolen. Granny's item had been used by the pickpocket on his wrist, and it looked like some kind of rather strange-looking artifact. The pickpocket shouted at Rain to return his belongings, but Rain obviously wouldn't return them because the pickpocket was the real thief. During the battle, there was an incident that stole control of the opponent's magic, which looked like a Bel Sidious, but it was not a Bel Sidious. The jewel, which is suspected to be an artifact, has 2 magic circles drawn on it, so it can be concluded that the object can steal magic up to the 2nd star level. This was quite interesting for Rain. The pickpocket was really wary of Rain and asked about his identity. He was quite afraid because he knew how the boy could cast magic so quickly, but Rain just turned around without a word because even though he told him his identity, the pickpocket wouldn't believe that Rain was Archmage Lin. Rain returned the item to its owner and received lots of applause from local residents who saw it. This made Rain a little flattered, but the praise was also expressed to Miss Warden, the girl in the white uniform. Suddenly Rain remembered about his entrance exam. He hurried away without releasing the pickpocket first from his magic. The pickpocket who saw Rain leave was disappointed, but his attention refocused when a sword pointed at him. A person with a cloak covering himself went over to the Warden girl. The Warden girl's name is Krista Warden. Krista received a reprimand from the person in the closed robe. The person behind the robe is Professor Caroline. Professor Caroline advised Krista that it was good to have a confident attitude, but that did not justify Krista being able to use the golem anywhere. Krista admitted that she was wrong and would be more careful next time. Based on this statement, Professor Caroline then praised Krista for being willing to learn quickly from her mistakes. Krista didn't mind this, but she was more interested in discussing Rain, who had appeared to help her. He told Professor Caroline that the boy was so great, especially in his magic casting speed, which was almost as fast as Professor Caroline. Not only Krista saw it, Professor Caroline had also seen this, and even realized that Rain's magic spellcasting seemed faster than Professor Caroline's spellcasting. Krista doesn't believe that. She believes his professor is better. Krista wonders what really happened because the boy didn't seem strong at the family meeting. Not only Rain, Krista also knows each other's family backgrounds. Professor Caroline was surprised by Rain's presence to help Krista, especially if the purpose of Rain and Krista's arrival was to take the entrance exam, even though the exam in question had started some time ago, so it was certain that no matter how fast Rain and Krista rushed, they would still be late. Krista just realized that there was a test. She asked Professor Caroline to let Krista go no matter what, but rules are still rules. Krista tries to bargain with the professor. Whether delays caused by urgent situations such as helping someone who needs help is intolerable, but instead of answering Krista's offer, Professor Caroline was more curious about when the girl had enough empathy for other people. Krista is still trying to convince the professor why she should be allowed to pass the exam. It would be better for the academy environment if there were lots of interesting characters in it. Professor Caroline agrees with that. Switch to the professor's room. Professor Caroline was deep in books looking for something. Having no track record in the history of magic or placing itself in magic competitions, there are no significant achievements in other fields, either to get the nickname of disaster from the Ludwig family brought from heaven. However, it is likely that he is a prodigy who is a genius in magic. Rain Ludwig is recorded as having been Scalzi Ludwig's assistant for 3 years. Scalzi Ludwig is a former great wizard and headmaster of Osiris. Scalzi is quite a difficult figure. Being his family doesn't mean being protected. Scalzi was the type of person who would call someone out so cruelly if that person didn't produce results. One clear example is Ellen Ludwig, who did not last long as Scalzi's assistant, even though she was his own daughter. Professor Caroline thought about how Rain could get the nickname as some kind of prodigy from the 8 great schools if in fact it was true that the boy had become Scalzi's assistant. Professor Caroline discovered something interesting. She then asked her assistant, Barden, to schedule a meeting with the Chancellor because she had something to discuss regarding individual admissions. According to the scheduled time, Professor Caroline went to the Chancellor. According to Professor Caroline, history seems to be repeating itself. Without any fundamental reason, they are also unsure, but promising talents will emerge in the same period as is happening now. Some of the talents in question include Hubert from Rohoinham School, Lillian from Rivendell School, Caden from Harimund School, Nora from Melov School, Logan from Chihak School. The 5 names are late students from 8 great schools who entered as applicants at once. Apart from that, the warden's family also sent a child who was quite talented, even though the child might struggle alone. This was because the conflict between the magical family and the 8 great was quite deep. The Delayton Academy side feels unhappy about being involved in student disputes, but the situation this time cannot be denied because there is a quite special situation. Chancellor, as head of the Academy Delayton, felt he had to inform the professors and instructors as soon as possible and for the time being he asked Professor Caroline to observe the students carefully and intervene if necessary. Most importantly, they should avoid too frequent interventions. Chancellor of Delayton Academy comes from the Page family, named Medelia Page. Professor Caroline was surprised because according to the professor it was still too quick to make a decision as stated by the Chancellor. The thing that needs to be considered is the existence of a genius from a magic family in this class, and it's not just from the Warden family, namely Krista. Medelia was surprised. Who do you think the student's Professor Caroline is referring to? And there's no way she doesn't know her students. The student that Professor Caroline refers to is one of the applicants she wants to pass in the additional exam. Professor Caroline didn't give a reason why the boy should be accepted, because Chancellor Medelia probably wouldn't believe her even if he told her. Chancellor Medelia will definitely see the figure she is referring to at the family meeting. Chancellor Medelia knew Professor Caroline's attitude, who had a habit of being complicated. But that was not her main goal because Professor Caroline at that time only had a personal opinion, even though she really wanted Rain Ludwig to be allowed to register. Professor Caroline really wanted to know how the 8 great schools would react to their decision. Moreover, one of the representatives of one of the 8 big scales, namely Owen, who was known for being strict, was also the homeroom teacher for these unsophisticated talents. The Chancellor asked whether Rain had received any reward for his heroic act of catching the thief, but as previously reported the boy had no intention of receiving any reward. Rain really hated it when it was revealed that he had become a hero for pickpocketing. Rain thought this would further complicate his life, and he preferred to be immersed in reading his books in peace. In the Chancellor's mind, Rain's first impression was that he was a strange person. However, according to Professor Caroline, strange people can also become great magicians, and that is the same as what Professor Caroline's master always said. Professor Caroline realized something. In her observations, Chancellor Medelia looked a little gloomy, and Professor Caroline's guess was confirmed by Medelia. She thought about Rain Ludwig catching a thief in the city, and this incident was thought to have a connection with the Dark Church, but this was denied. The Special Affairs Department had contacted them in advance and informed them that it would be visiting the Delayton Academy soon. That made Chancellor Medelia's feelings worse, and she asked Professor Caroline to prepare. Rain, who was late in the exam, was told that his admission had missed the exam time due to being late the morning after the chaos occurred. Rain didn't even rest at the inn, but instead sat on the academy fence. While he was thinking, a professor named Caroline came over to him and suggested to the boy to take an additional exam, and if he accepted this, then he would be placed on the list of successful candidates. Rain had been worried that the additional exam would be considered a disgrace for those who failed regular admission, but that was no longer the case. Rain, who was at a high level of anxiety about the retake exam, immediately accepted the offer. Thus finally the boy stood in front of the gate of Delayton, the best magic academy where the pinnacle of intelligence in the holy human kingdom gathers. Rain was standing in front of the Delayton gate wearing the academy's all-white uniform. In the past, as Lin, he never thought about school. In fact, he never had anything to do with school in his previous life. He always studied magic from the principle of Osiris. And in his current life, as Rain Ludwig, he learns from his family. To be honest, even now he doesn't feel the need to learn from anyone. But in this life he has to find something that his grandfather said Esther left behind. To him it was like Esther was waiting for him at the end of the road. So until then, he had to increase his magic skills to at least the same level as his magic skills in his previous life. While Rain was walking around quietly, someone's surprised voice startled him. That's Krista. Rain, who was conscious, then greeted him briefly. Krista, who was shocked at first, reflexively thanked him for being helped last time, but that gratitude quickly turned into an annoyed chatter, which stated that even without Rain's help, she could have overcome the situation. Before the girl had finished ranting, her voice was so loud that it attracted the attention of everyone around her. Krista is a recommended student in that class, so her reputation is quite high. Krista has popularity and is very well known in the academy. Rain's words made her quite big-headed, and she even boasted about a rumor she had heard that if there was someone from their generation who didn't know the name Krista Warden, then that meant that person was a spy from the Republic. Krista proudly stated that Rain was her rival. She felt that being her rival was a blessing, but honestly Rain, who heard the girls' chatter, was someone who couldn't stand annoying things like rivalry or competition between individuals. Seeing Krista's behavior, Rain remembered someone who was similar to the girl's character. This person used to say exactly the same thing as Krista and arbitrarily made Lin her rival. This person was a naughty girl that Lin met in the tower and insisted on being treated as a senior because this person had entered the tower first. Rain remembered this person very clearly because of her arrogance, and without realizing it, he cracked a thin smile in front of Krista, which succeeded in making the girl even more explosive. Krista, who felt underestimated, immediately cast magic to show off and fight Rain. Rain couldn't understand what the girl was doing without paying attention to their current place and situation. Krista only cares about how she is validated as someone with very high abilities. Rain realized how Krista didn't care about her surroundings. He started to get annoyed and remembered a figure from his past. It was Gisela. Rain started to think that Gisela had been reincarnated as Krista, who was now in front of him. Rain was confused about how to respond to the girl's showy attitude and began to think about showing a little sting in her words. Rain started to use his magic, but then a third person appeared whose words were no less harsh than Krista. The person came and immediately insulted both of them. That person was Hubert from the Rohoinum School. Hubert came from Rohoinum School and was the second-ranked graduate of Delayton High School. Rumors are circulating that Hubert has long been Krista's rival. Hubert's arrival broke the commotion caused by Krista and Rain to watch the two of them. But Krista chose to stop causing a fuss. The target of Krista's arrogance shifts to Hubert, but Hubert is in fact no less arrogant than Krista. Rain, who was also there, looked as if he had been neglected. Hubert took the opportunity to offend Rain, but Rain just stared at Hubert's face intensely without doing anything. No words from either Krista or Hubert managed to disturb Rain. Rain was just wondering about the identity of the arrogant humans who suddenly appeared in front of him. Rain also questions Hubert's ability to use magic, because anyone who tries to fight with Rain must at least be proficient in using magic. Everyone was silent. Even Hubert was very surprised by the words that came out of Rain's mouth. Krista laughed out loud at Rain's words. She continued to mock Hubert, who was defeated by Rain when he bragged about being a nobody. The activity of showing off to each other finally ended with Hubert feeling very annoyed. They had to end it because welcoming new students was about to begin. Krista was called directly because she had to serve as a new student representative. She was ordered to immediately enter and prepare for the oath. Rain started to enter the room without paying attention to Hubert, who was still stunned. Krista called Rain again for a moment, making Rain even more annoyed with the girl. Krista exclaims that this time she let Rain go because of time constraints, but next time she won't let him go. With full confidence, Krista is sure that they will finish what they started in the future. Those words were heard by everyone and could almost result in misunderstandings. Rain is reluctant to think about anything troublesome, and in the eyes of people, Krista and Rain are two incomparable figures. However, amidst these opinions there are those who believe in Rain's abilities. The fact that Rain had been Scalzi's assistant increased his reputation a bit, even though others didn't immediately believe it. Delayton Academy entrance ceremony 1388 begins. Like the usual acceptance ceremonies, the new students were not all enthusiastic and not all bored. However, Rain was one of the bored students. His attention was diverted until the event reached the welcoming session held by the Chancellor. Chancellor Medelia Page was known as the kingdom's best mage and was the head of the Mage Council at the time. Medelia is a direct descendant of Magic, Vizimitsa Page. Medelia's purple hair color is a genetic result of her offspring. Lin remembered that in the past he had fought a mage with purple hair, exactly the same as the Chancellor's hair on stage. Medelia welcomed the new students. Instead of getting emotional about the success of new students in entering the gates of Delayton, Medelia actually explained the facts on the ground that the 233 new students who were successfully accepted would gradually decrease over time. Based on past track records, it is still a shame that not more than half of the number of new students survive until the second year, either due to missing classes or being expelled. Furthermore, among the students who survive the second year, there will only be around 60 people remaining who will continue to the third year, and of those 60 people there will only be half who will continue to the graduation phase. That's what causes it every year Delayton only graduating around 30 graduates who successfully completed the program. Whether you regret it or not, that's what is called Delayton. Delayton is a place to polish the talents of magicians. The Academy will continuously test its students under the guise of Y in order to assess whether the students are rough stones that can be turned into gems or not. Policy from Delayton is unlimited competition. Students who lag behind in the competition are not entitled to receive a diploma. The Chancellor's one message to her students is to defend themselves until they graduate. Fighting with others and growing is a normal thing. In Delayton, anyone who enters as a worthless stone, if they succeed in coming out, will shine with the same brilliance as a precious stone. The Chancellor's remarks were completed. As a fellow mage, Medelia welcomes all her students. He wished everyone their luck. Medelia is back. One sentence that was quite impressive for Rain was an invitation to meet again in 3 years. Rain was really looking forward to that time. The professors were also present at the welcoming ceremony, and each of them paid attention to their prospective students, including Professor Caroline and Professor Owen. Professor Caroline was quite happy to see the enthusiasm of the new students, but unlike Professor Owen, his hopes were crushed. Professor Owen had hoped that this class would be a class with a high level, but as far as he saw during the welcoming ceremony, he only found idiots with dirt on their heads. According to Professor Owen, his new students were destined to fail. The first day after the welcoming ceremony, Rain went around looking for where his class was. It is recorded that he had classes in the college department building, Hall of the Sleeping Dragon. The place looked very striking with its roof in the shape of a sleeping dragon. The building looks very majestic. When he found his class and entered, Rain was the first in class. The atmosphere was good enough to make Rain in a good mood that day, but a voice beside him broke his calm. His seatmate was a figure who had made some of his short time in Delayton very noisy. That's Krista. Rain peace at Delayton Academy was gone. Lessons hadn't started yet, but he had to listen to Krista Warden's arrogant chatter without knowing when to stop. Not enough with Krista. Another person with pink hair came along who translated Krista's chatter as feeling happy because she was sitting on the same table as Rain. Krista is getting worse. Of course she was happy because with Rain beside him it would be easier for him to take Rain down. Rain that gives up his peace could only cover his face. As if there wasn't enough noise for Rain, another person who was noisy with his arrogance entered, namely Hubert. Hubert again mocked Krista for being rude by pointing at other people. The pink-haired girl defended Krista because from the start she really admired Krista. Despite Krista's bad actions, the girl still found him charming more than someone who was only superficially impressive. The pink-haired girl was named Gertrude Panton from the Panton baronet family. The commotion continued to occur, making Rain start to feel that he was going to get seasick, even though he was not at sea. Rain remembered that in the past his colleague Fried had once asked Lynn whether the young archmage had ever attended school. Of course, Lynn didn't go to public school because he had become an elite 4-star mage. There was nothing the school could teach him, and it would only be a waste of time if Lynn went to school. Fried mocks Lynn's decision. According to the woman, school is not a place to study for academic success, but a place to understand people. School is a place where people learn from other people. But this is now being questioned by Rain, who witnesses strange bullies in front of him. The time shows class start time. Their first lesson is about to begin. Someone entered the classroom looking big and with a scary face. Rain almost mistook the person for a gorilla instead of his homeroom teacher. The class atmosphere became strange. Rain asked what the homeroom teacher had done to make the situation so quiet. Krista told him that the person was Professor Owen, who was known for being stingy with grades. Owen glanced around at his new students, then felt dizzy for a moment. Owen groaned. He felt unmotivated because he had to guide miserable monkeys for 1 year where the monkeys only thought about dirt in their brains. Owen didn't even think of his students as people. Not long after he entered the class, he even punished several students who were not focused while he was talking to them. Unlike Medelia, who made her new students aware of the reality Delayton politely, Professor Owen is more likely to make his students aware with sarcastic sentences. Entering Delayton is not a proud achievement. Those who dream of becoming a palace mage for a great noble or live in luxury by erecting their own mage tower are made aware in reality. They can only call Owen master if their dreams have come true, but at this moment they are still nothing. Graduates of the 8 major schools are called the worst and idiots. The strange mathematical formulas brought in the name of school traditions disgust Owen so much that he don't expect the slightest contribution from the graduates of the 8 great schools, as long as they don't disturb the class. Hubert, who had raised his hands proudly, flinched, not understanding Owen's words. Not only that, Owen also turned to students who came from noble families. The student in question is Krista and Rain, who immediately raised their hand when they felt called. If the graduates of the 8 great schools were the worst, then those from noble families were considered especially disgusting to Owen. Krista, who heard this usage, could only remain silent in embarrassment, while Rain only listened without reacting when Owen said that those from noble families could only act as if they knew everything and be arrogant without ever experiencing difficulties. The homeroom teacher even told them to just go home and learn how to change their own clothes. In his mind, Rain also accidentally called his homeroom teacher a great monkey who even had a talent for rhetoric that had never existed before. In his opinion, Professor Owen would probably be more suitable as a cult leader than a mage. Owen continued his words. The task this year was to make the students into mages who could be better used than monkeys. In his class, there was no place for anyone worse than a monkey, and anyone who couldn't catch up would be left behind. The main instruction from the homeroom teacher to his students who he considered monkeys was to evolve into humans. All the students in the class were just silent without saying a word. The position of the students here is in a completely wrong position. When they answer the words of their homeroom teacher, of course it will be something that is not right. But when they also just sit there listening to Owen's scolding, Owen actually feels that his students are not listening to him. Owen steps up to one of his students and asks if he's scary. The student answered haltingly that the homeroom teacher was not scary. But that answer was also not true because Owen thought that answer made it seem like he was seen as a playful person by his students. Soon after, Owen unilaterally decided to hold a pair test right then and there. The rule of the test is that the pair in last position will be immediately expelled. The students started to panic and become noisy. How can it be a magic academy? Delating those who are difficult to enter will be very easy to expel their students. Is the student expulsion procedure really that easy, or maybe Owen is just trying to scare the students? Professor Owen didn't care and continued writing his assignments on the blackboard. The exam processing time is 20 minutes. During this time, they have to solve the magic problems on the paper on each table. For students who submit papers at the last or cannot even complete them, they will be expelled as promised. The students were stunned to hear Professor Owen's orders in disbelief, but their thoughts were interrupted when Professor Owen shouted that the exam had started. The exam is a pair exam. According to Owen, the students should be able to solve the problem of 2-star magic if they put their minds together. The students started to panic. Rain is paired with Krista. When he turned to look at his pair, it appeared that Krista was fully concentrating on solving the magic problem on the piece of paper in front of her. They encountered a magic problem where a magic circle was shaped like a fan. The runes inscribed are Jube and Ju. Through this explanation, Krista can find out what formula to use. She asked Rain, who was still busy paying attention to himself, to start making basic formulas using matrix, and after that they had to find answers using cubic function formulas. Based on his experience as Lin, Rain called Krista the type of person who likes to suffer unnecessarily. Krista shouted, ordering Rain to stop talking and start writing. Krista is quite tense due to the family expectations she bears. Since childhood, she often heard people say that the Warden family was finished. For the Warden family, Krista is considered the only hope that can revive the family's reputation. That's why Krista insists on being the best student. Rain still continued to look at Krista. Krista, who felt uncomfortable asking for a function answer, handed over to Rain. Rain has solved it. The components for working on their questions were complete, and they only had to finish them when suddenly the wind blew. Rain tried to close the window with his magic, and when they turned their attention away from their work, the paper containing the answers had been destroyed by tearing. Krista, who was shocked, caused quite a stir and attracted Professor Owen's attention to reprimand her. Their paper is ruined. Krista has to rework it. Rain realized something was wrong. He then activated Bell Sidious to check it. The wind that damaged their paper was not wind but magic. The magic returned to its owner, and as it traced, Rain's sight ended on Hubert, one of the 8 great schools. Hubert cheated with his dirty tricks. He comes from the Rohirrim school, which is the school of wind. The secret art of the school is silent and colorless. The art can be activated quietly without any color, and therefore it can be concluded that it is magic that damages the paper Krista, and Rain is wind manipulation. Rain's analysis came to an end because Krista ordered him to rewrite it immediately. Krista started to panic because the time had reached the end and only 8 minutes remained. Even though they already have the process and solution in their heads, it takes more time to write it all down. Rain saw how hasty his pair was. He then pulled out the paper that Krista was working on and said honestly that they couldn't possibly finish it on time if they used the same method as before. Krista still believes they won't know if they don't try. Rain advises her again that everyone should know when it's time to give up. His advice did not mean that Rain would give up on being expelled from school, but he already had other methods. Rain immediately wrote down the ways and methods he thought were correct. As soon as he finished, he gave Krista advice. As a mage, they are not allowed to give up quickly. A mage remains strong and calm at all times. Lin remembered the time when he traveled with the hero party where the place he lived in was a world that didn't even give him 8 minutes to think. The payment that will be charged if you delay even a few seconds is not only expulsion from school but death. Rain told Krista that in this task he would be the one leading while Krista would only help him. It would be better if it didn't hinder their work. The first group to submit the exam assignments was Hubert and his partner. He arrogantly asked Professor Owen to evaluate their results. After seeing and testing it, the JE and U runes actually worked quite well, and considering the relatively short time it took the group to solve the series problems, according to Professor Owen, it wasn't too bad. Even so, Professor Owen still warned the group not to be arrogant at first, because in reality, it wasn't that great. Such a problem only takes 2 minutes, so the score obtained by Hubert's group is only C Hubert is against. He felt unacceptable because his group was the first in the class to solve the problem, and the mathematical formula was perfect. He continues to question what the reason is, but Owen warns him that DeLayton is not an easy academy. Professor Owen had signaled Hubert. He definitely knew the reason why his group only got a C. The Huberts pair were about to speak, but her words were cut off because Rain was there to submit their work. The other students were surprised because it was clear that the previous answer sheet from the group Krista and Rain had been damaged, so it was quite a question for them how the group could be in the second fastest position in completing the exam. Not only the students, but even the professors were also shocked. Calmly, Rain and Krista asked for their work to be assessed. Professor Owen smiled slightly. How unpleasant it would be for him to know that the group that previously experienced technical problems while working on it was able to solve the exam questions, especially that this group was a group of students with noble family backgrounds. Professor Owen was already eager to expel the novice mages from the magical lineage. Rain answered Professor Owen's slur with confidence that if you couldn't use magic just because of the wind, then you shouldn't be called a mage. At least Owen likes Rain's enthusiasm, even though he still believes their abilities are not necessarily as good as his enthusiasm. Owen was a little surprised by what he saw. The work of Rain's group showed that his magic circle drawing was different from that proposed by Professor Owen. One of the magic circles is fan-shaped and the other is circle-shaped because the JE rune works well with water attribute magic. Using that, Rain then simplified the mathematical formula to use the rune. If you can solve the problem of using runes with first-order equations, the activation time will be shorter. Professor Owen had quite a refreshing answer. This lesson never even came up in middle school, and it's amazing that Rain was able to understand it. It is a matter of the secondary school curriculum. For Rain, someone cannot say that he can use magic well unless he has complete mastery of runes. So based on that, Rain changed the shape of the magic circle. His group pair, Krista, didn't move and even felt dizzy when she heard Rain's conversation with Professor Owen. Professor Owen began to understand his students' intention to shorten the activation time after comprehending the rune. Rain thinks that's a pretty good answer, but whether it's successful or not can't be determined yet, even though Rain is quite confident. He asked that what he was doing be checked immediately by Professor Owen. Professor Owen couldn't wait to see the disappointed faces of this group of students with magical family backgrounds. This is because if you use a dual attribute magic circle, the calculations to complete you will be more difficult. Even though after checking Rain's work, it turned out to be successful. Everyone in the class was amazed by what they saw except Rain. Professor Owen even clapped his hands in joy. Professor Owen has been teaching for 13 years, and he has even seen many geniuses. But this is the first time he has been given a different answer. He was quite annoyed, but this answer deserved an S grade. The S grade was a grade that Professor Owen had never previously given on such a trivial quiz. These words then made Rain happy enough, in contrast to Krista, who was too happy. Krista's pleasure was accompanied by her noise. Professor Owen asked them to return to their seats immediately, or they would have their marks deducted. Not only Krista's group, Professor Owen also ordered Hubert's group to return to their respective seats. The evaluation has been completed. Krista returned happily, but Rain faced Hubert before actually returning to the bench. The look in Hubert's eyes was so sharp that it disturbed Hubert and asked him about Rain's business. Professor Owen is aware of the situation and says not to make a scene if they don't want to be disciplined. Rain was silent, but his eyes became sharper. He then said as he passed Hubert, he would not allow Hubert's fraudulent actions next time. The students who took the written test were ultimately able to survive the first lesson as they listened in class despite the harsh criticism from Professor Owen. Rain wanted to comment on the part that Krista was doing, but at that time Krista was daydreaming, or maybe she was deliberately ignoring Rain. Class ends. Professor Owen felt strange about his students' expressions. It could be that what he explained was difficult for his students to understand, but the students didn't need to worry because they said that Professor Owen had promised to show them something more interesting. Those who cannot follow the lessons will be left behind. That day's lesson was a basic one that they had to remember, well, no matter what. Those words immediately turned the disciples' expressions darker than before. Class has been dismissed. Rain was about to come back, but Krista called him. Krista thanked Rain for the group assignment that Rain completed. However, her high prestige made her quite reluctant and embarrassed to thank Rain. Rain didn't really hear Krista's words, so he asked Krista to repeat what she said. Krista shouted not to repeat what she said. Krista, with a bright red face, exclaimed to Rain that she would return the favor to Rain another time. Krista emphasized that they were rivals and should not help each other. That was the only time Krista was willing to help each other with Rain. However, other students had spread the news that Professor Owen, who was known to be very stingy in grades, had given Krista an S grade. But the grade was obtained because it was a group assignment. It could even be said that the grade was obtained by Rain's idea. The next day, Rain met Krista again. Rain reminded Krista of her words about returning the favor to Rain that Krista said yesterday. Krista only responded modestly because she didn't have the opportunity to repay Rain. Krista again warned Rain not to be arrogant, but whether Rain was arrogant or not, the one who mentioned retribution was Krista. According to Rain, making promises that cannot be kept will only make people look bad. Krista was annoyed and chose to leave, followed by Gertrude. Rain went through the academy. Along the way, he heard people talking about him. Rain is the eldest son of the Ludwig family, or his luck in being able to sit next to Krista. People still don't believe it. With Rain's abilities, he should be able to pass the regular exam instead of the additional exam. However, no one there knew that the reason Rain didn't take the regular exam was because he was late for the exam because he caught a pickpocket first in the city. Rain doesn't care. He just rushed to find his room in the dormitory, his private room. The room reminded Lin of when he was in the Magic Tower. In his previous life as Lin, he liked to stay in a room like his and only focus on studying magic. He also remembered how his quiet room had become busy when Esther came. Rain started to lie down and think. On the first day and first lesson, he didn't get anything. He began to think about investigating the remains of himself as Lin by infiltrating the Vatican, but in fact infiltrating the Vatican would be very difficult with Rain's identity and abilities. Rain tried to use 4-star level magic, but after trying it, the magic was still too difficult for him. He was then surprised by the presence of an owl on the edge of his window. The owl was carrying something like a wooden box. There was no sender's name on the box, and the owl who delivered it immediately left after the wooden box was in Rain's hands. It is possible that his father, Kevin Ludwig, sent the wooden box. When Rain opened it, there were 2 books in the wooden box, one of which was quite worn and old. Rain's eyes widened when he saw the worn book. It was the diary that Lin left Esther in her final moments. His mind suddenly went dark. Who do you think sent that to Rain? Rain suspects that whoever sends it, there is a possibility that the sender knows Rain's true identity, Lin the Archmage. Krista, who was quite annoyed, vented her frustration at the magic training facility on campus called the Battle Dragon Field. Gertrude was there to accompany Krista to practice. Gertrude guessed what might have happened to Krista. In her observations, Krista seemed more enthusiastic. Her guess might be because Krista had met Rain this morning. Gertrude began to wonder what really happened between the 2 people. Krista dodged it. She answered that she was just annoyed because she met Rain again early in the morning. She released the stress from meeting Rain through practicing. Even though Krista answered Gertrude with this answer, Gertrude understood exactly how Krista was. Krista couldn't fool anyone with an attitude like that. Gertrude could only swallow that fact from Krista, who continued to deny her true feelings. Surely the rumors regarding Krista being helped by Rain during the exam are true. This was enough to surprise Gertrude. The reason is, the Rain she met as a child at a family gathering was not like the Rain he is today. Elsewhere, in the living room of the student dormitory, Hubert came to gather with his friends who were students from 8 great schools. Just entering the room, someone had mocked him as a grade C loser. That person was Logan, who came from the Chihak school. Hubert orders Logan to be quiet or die if he continues to taunt him, but Logan is not someone who is easily frightened by bluffing. He even continued his insults and said in front of everyone there that he had heard that Hubert had gotten grade C, besides that Krista had gotten grade S, even when Krista brought Rain in her group. Hubert was silent. Logan asked Hubert about what kind of person Rain was, who was nicknamed a genius child because, according to rumors circulating, Rain was a cowardly figure. Even so, Logan added that Rain could be sure that he would definitely be better than Hubert. Hubert responds that that's not something a muscle-brained fool could say. Hubert started to get angry, and Logan continued to respond. They almost had a fight, but were stopped by Lillian from Rivendell School. Logan is planning a strategy to bring down the pair of magical nobles. Logan invited Liliana, or Lily, to join, but Lily responded implicitly in her words that she refused. That's what causes Logan's magical achievements to remain stagnant, because he just does silly, useless things. For Lily, there was no point in them bullying the weak, even if it was Krista. Logan laughed. His words just now were just a joke, but Hubert, who had a personal grudge, was determined to destroy this pair of noble descendants with his own hands. He even warned his friends not to interfere, or he would destroy them first. When he was alone, Hubert vented his anger. What exactly did Rain do to be able to work under Professor Scalzi Ludwig as an assistant for 3 years when he was chosen not based on blood ties? Is it true that it's just because Rain's ability is someone who can't even get a single rank? That matter should impossible. Rain was in his room checking the books he got from the wooden box. The first part of the book tells about Lin's life. The second part contains about the magic and combat styles that Lin uses. Lin was surprised. He knew that there was someone who currently knew him as Lin who was in Rain's body. But how did that person know, and why didn't he contact Lin immediately? Without realizing it, the clock showed 11 o'clock at night. Rain had to immediately turn off the lights in his room, so he wouldn't be sanctioned by the dorm supervisor. He stood up to turn off the light, but then his eyes fell on another book that was in the wooden box from before. In his mind, there was an image of Esther holding the book. Rain then grabbed the book and tried to open it. He was surprised when Rudian appeared from between the pages of the book. It is Rudian, the ancient runes of the 8 great schools that he had created in his life as Lin. However, Rudian, it was twice as big and darker than before. Quite a strange Rudian, it can last for more than 300 years. He began to wonder whose magic power it was and why. When the Rudian was in Rain's hand, a display appeared showing that the research progress of unique magic could be continued, and the progress had reached 37%. Rain was surprised. The research data about the research to reach the sage level that he had done appeared. In the notes there are 12 original runes that Lin tried in real combat 300 years ago. Lin thought that he had failed, but it turned out that his progress had reached 37%. One thing made Rain wonder. It should be like 4-star magic Rudy wouldn't be able to check the progress of the 6-star magic. But if that was true, then Rain wasn't wrong in his path. If he continues along that path, perhaps he will be able to reach the truth. Rain felt hope suddenly appear. This hope then made him suddenly forget the sender of the books in the wooden box. The thought instantly disappeared from his head. Guided by the book, Rain restarted his research. It rained that day, but the rain he felt was not the same as the rain in the north, which would feel cold. Rain in the southern region still leaves a warm impression due to the influence of the Badancho Mountains. This made Rain feel happy enough to hum happily. Rain asked the dormitory supervisor where he could practice magic freely. The recommended facility is the same battlefield as Krista used before. Rain's drenched appearance was enough to make the dorm supervisor curious, but it was caused by Rain himself, who was happy to walk under the rain. The dorm supervisor guides him to a facility called Battlefield, which is a place to train powerful magic with a wide range. The battlefield is surrounded by high-level magic to prevent damage, and restore so students can freely cast spells without having to worry about their surroundings. Rain only needs to touch the entrance with the student ring obtained when officially enrolled in Delayton. After Rain's existence was confirmed by the system, Rain immediately chose the room where he would practice and asked for a solid target for his training property. The room then provided what Rain requested with a 2-star magic level. Rain started to open the book again. In the book it was noted that the rune U would give molecules the property of moving around. And if this rune is carved into flame magic, it will create the effect of burning embers that move and burn continuously. With these notes, Rain will start implementing it. Rain started by building a triangular magic circle and carving the Bu rune. His first attempt failed with the conclusion that 1-star level magic didn't work. Rain tried again, and this time his magic was quite successful, and after that he beat the magic to the target. Without realizing it, Hubert was able to witness what Rain was doing and commented that the magic he used was very bad. Hubert increasingly wondered how someone who couldn't even use 1-star magic properly could become Scalzi's assistant. The characteristics of flame magic were quite noisy, but because what he saw was quiet enough, it was certain that the magic used by Rain was still at the basic level. With this assumption, Hubert left the place happily. Yes, he was increasingly convinced that the rumors circulating saying that Rain was Scalzi's assistant were certainly false. Unfortunately, Hubert didn't see it through to the end. As soon as Hubert left, the targets Rain attacked began to fall. Rain realizes that the magic he did almost didn't work, but his goal was to use flame with the U properties so that it would penetrate the target's body and melt it from the inside. That was the actual effect that Rain was hoping for, but the effect only worked after 30 seconds had passed after the attack. So in conclusion, the magic he had just used, and was the result of the research he got from the book, took about 30 seconds to melt a sandstone golem with a 2-star level. He realized that there were still shortcomings in this magic, but he was quite happy with its progress because he still had enough time to research it. No matter how many mistakes he makes, he can still solve them. It was the first time he felt how exciting it was to do magic research. Rain returns to use Rudian from that book. It was recorded that re-established the mechanical theory and modified the Bu rune to U. Even though both have the same pronunciation, the writing is different. Rudy can not only detect magic in the surroundings, but also summarize and report the progress of research carried out. Rudian's presence really helped him in the research process. Yes, we can also see continued progress in unique magic research based on environmental conditions, which has increased from the initial 37% to 37.1%. Rain tried to think about what caused the research progress to increase, because the cause could be due to improved mathematical theory or the runes becoming more refined. There is also a possible meaning behind training in this way, although Rain still has plenty of time to think, so he doesn't need to rush. Not far from where he was, he felt the effects of magic, and after he looked around, Rain found Hubert, who was also practicing magic. While paying attention to the training, Rain could tell that Hubert's abilities weren't that bad, or at least worth talking about.